Hello again, we're live from Infotec 2016, covering a lot of the keynote and session speakers that are available here in Omaha at Infotec. I'm here with Chance Irvine. Chance, thanks for coming out and this is number 2 for you, right?
Yeah.
On the interview here.
Yeah.
You were here last, was it last
I think it was
Infotec?
2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. Yep.
Talking a little bit about Proxibid. You're here kind of talking about cloud computing,
Correct.
Midwest cloud computing. Let's dig in a little bit. Before we do that, a little bit about you. Give us your background again, where you're from, what you do, those kinds of things.
You bet. So I'm dual-hatted here today. My full-time role at Proxibid is Director IT Operations and Infrastructure. I'm also here with Midwest Cloud Computing, basically a side gig. Everything's on the up and up. Everybody knows.
They're all aware of it.
They're all aware. So no surprises. I'm not leaving Proxibid. But here today talking about the cloud, my experience beyond that was at Director of MIS at Airlight Plastics and at West Corporation for about a decade prior to that. So I'm pushing 20 years in the industry now. The past 5 years at Proxibid has really been the key thing is moving our platform from traditional colo and in-house resources to the cloud.
Right.
So that's the experience behind that I have behind me. And then with Midwest Cloud Computing, it's an opportunity to go out and consult with folks who are they're toying with or they're tormented by the idea. How do I push this out to the cloud because my business leadership and other reasons are pushing me that way? How do I do it without losing control? Doing it in a compliant manner if you have high compliance. And what I have for them is it can be done. There's just ways you got to walk through it. I think the cloud is for everyone, but I don't think the cloud is for everything you have. Right. And you just got to pull that apart. And we're going to discuss some of those things in the panel today.
Yeah, and we'll ask you a little bit about that, but who is Midwest Cloud Computing? So as an entity, what does it do? Why does it exist? Those kinds of things.
Sure. So I've partnered up with Jay Guerin. He was former CIO of American National Bank most recently. He left the bank last year, and he started up Midwest Cloud Computing, and I've talked with him over the past year, and we just had some synergies there. And the intent is just to help folks get educated. How do you move there? Some folks don't even care how. They just got to set something up, and they don't want to worry about it. They got a business idea, and they know it involves technology, and they just don't want to deal with it. We can play that role as well. We can take on that administration and deployment and just get that in place for them and be their IT department, if you will, if that's what they need. We're going to do that through the appropriate cloud provider that's out there. We're not setting up our own facilities. We're not doing the hardware ourselves. We're helping broker for that customer. Mm-hmm. Where's the right place for you? Sometimes it's more than one. Depends on the workloads involved. And then inside of that, we're doing some virtual CIO, CTO services. Some medium and smaller companies, they can't really stomach bringing in that higher executive, but they know they need that guidance, but they only need it for a short time, get them on the right track. And then the IT leadership they can have that bigger picture support over time through those virtual CIO services.
Yeah, we had Teresa Payton here.
Okay.
And she was talking about that. Sometimes companies are small enough, they just need to hire a part-time CIO, so to speak, to help make some of those decisions. And so Midwest would be a company where I could purchase those kinds of. You bet.
And Jay and I are going to directly support some of those, but someone may get into a scenario where, well, our specialties here. Well, you know what, Jay and I specialty aren't there, but we have a series of people that are specialists in certain areas, still in IT, but it may be in medical, maybe in manufacturing. I have a little bit of manufacturing, but some of our other partners that we can bring in to you. I mean, it's still Midwest Cloud Computing as far as you're concerned, but we're going to source in the right CIO background to your situation.
When we think of cloud computing, we think of Amazon, we think of Azure. Are there other players in the space from a rack space, but are there other players in there that you guys are working with?
Certainly. And our key focus is what's right for your business need. Mm-hmm. Now, could be a Google, could be a company no one's heard of. And there's several players out there. They have cloud service. They specialize in certain areas. There's a group in Des Moines they've figured out how to bring the AS400 into a cloud environment, and they're making the investment in that AS400 infrastructure so that other companies can start getting away from their own refreshes.
Sure.
So There's a handful of companies out there that will source in. Some of our key ones, we're going to bring Rackspace to bear at the beginning of most conversations, because Rackspace has managed services in depth, not just for their own, but they've also have agreements with Microsoft and agreements with AWS to bring their managed services to those platforms. That's a little different than if we hired a couple people and said, hey, you figure out how to be an AWS expert. Well, because that's just me doing that on myself, right?
AWS is a complicated environment now. I mean,
it can be.
You go in there and there's a ton of stuff you can do.
You bet.
So how do you guys deal with it from that standpoint of walking the customer through it from the very beginning? Do you guys own that? Do they own the administration? I imagine it depends on the implementation.
It absolutely depends on the implementation, but certainly walking them through that is exactly where our key benefit for them is going to be. We're going to help them decide, okay, do I do this on my own with my internal staff? Well, if you've got folks that have in-depth knowledge in that environment, sure, you've already got the investment there. But if the answer is no, we don't, fine, we can still help you get there. And here's how that support looks like. Sure. To include, you have these resources, but they're really an extension of your team if that's how you want to implement them, where they can be collaborative. Okay, is there a premium on that? Usually, you're paying a little bit more, but you're usually just paying that premium on the server. And in my ideal situation, where I'm most familiar, you can bring those services to bear through the cost on your servers. And I'm primarily talking about Rackspace here.
Sure.
But Rackspace supporting all those different environments,
right,
the AWS and the Azure included. And you're just paying a little bit more and you're getting a wealth of people behind it. You're getting in-depth knowledge in Linux, in Windows, and networks, Cisco, firewalls, load balancers, F5. In my Proxibid role, it makes no sense for us to hire an F5 specialist.
Right.
But we need F5s. That partner does that for me. I don't pay fees per hour for when I need them. It's just part of it. Their support. They are my F5 team.
Yep.
So anyway, we can walk through that scenario for anybody's business and break that down.
What do you find? You get customers that they've tried to do this themselves.
Certainly.
They've got a bunch of wound up in it.
You bet. Certainly, some of the most common thing right now is folks that, well, I went and tried that, and I don't like that platform because I did this and it didn't work well. Well, it's sort of a you get what you pay for scenario. If you go to any one of the platforms that we've been talking about and you do their low cost entry level all on your own because you like that 13 cents an hour, boy, that rate sounds great. Well, it is great if you've got all the pieces and parts and the talent to manage it. Then it's fantastic. Problem is, most of the folks that do that, they think they're going to get this done shortcut. They have no idea what the workloads really look like. And they set up the really cheap environment, and then they're mad because it didn't work out.
Right.
Well, it's not really that service provider's fault. Then again, it is as well. There's a conversation that didn't happen between that customer and the provider. And we're here to help make sure that we bridge that gap. If you've already invested, we can help you fix that. Maybe you need to uplift and go, or maybe we just need to retool it just a little bit and make it right.
Do you think that's the biggest misconception about cloud computing, is that it's easy to do yourself? Or are there others out there when you come across, how people are perceiving cloud computing, are there other bigger problems than trying to run the infrastructure myself?
Certainly. There's certainly concerns with how easy or hard it is, how secure or not secure it can be, how compliant, if maybe I need HIPAA so I can't ever go to cloud. Not true. If you have certain compliancies, that's fine. We just need to know about them, and you have to implement things in a certain way. High compliant, you better know where your data is. Well, you might have to have dedicated storage. What do you mean dedicated? I'm in the cloud. Well, yes, but it can still be a dedicated service for the right workload. You're not going to be able to do those high compliance stuff on the 13 cents an hour servers. Now, maybe some of the front end pieces are out there, but your core is probably going to need some extra care.
Yeah, and that's where you would go to a vendor that may provide that on-prem or off-prem dedicated type service to get it done. And so you can broker out those kinds of solutions. Hey, I know you're here on Midwest. Let's talk Proxibid for just a second, though.
You bet.
You guys are growing like crazy. It's a great story. It's a great Omaha story.
You bet.
We see it popping up on Silicon Prairie News all the time. What's it like to be the leader of that from an IT perspective, from your side? Sometimes
it's a little nerve-wracking. I have a little more gray than I did before. I'm thinning out a little bit more than I had 5 years ago. Of course, I have young teenagers at this point. That might be some of that as well.
Yeah,
but
they tend to do that.
Yes.
Too bad you can't outsource that part of parenting sometimes, right?
Yeah, but that'd be a lot to miss, though, wouldn't it?
It would be. It would be.
So it's exciting. There's lots of stuff going on. Just this Friday, Saturday was looking to be a huge day. I'm walking along, CEO and the SVP Ops is sitting in the conference room, and they're, come over here. Like, are we good for Saturday? Yeah, why not? Well, huge day. Lots of big providers selling lots of big assets. Okay. Folks start to get a little nervous. There's huge opportunity. Well, if things are going to get screwed up that day, missed opportunity, big risk, right? Well, because of what they've allowed me to do the last 5 years, the team I've put together and the investment we've made across that infrastructure, certainly working with software and QA team and the business teams, but they've really bought into adopting the change management necessary to make sure, frankly, when they're starting to get concerned about this big Saturday, no big deal on the infrastructure side.
Yeah.
But it's the investment,
right.
The time ahead. That didn't just happen. It took a couple of years to really make the platform robust, and now we've had probably 3 really good years of good advancement in the product. But we put that structure in place. We're able to grow.
Right. Well, 2 years ago we interviewed you. I think it was 2. And you were guys just coming off of a big sale of automobiles here in Nebraska.
You bet.
And that pushed, as we interviewed you, that pushed your systems. It was interesting with the infrastructure you had to put in. It was out in the middle of nowhere in Nebraska.
Correct.
When you think about a few significant changes that you've made in the last 2 years, from that date to now, what do you think's the number one or two things you've done differently in your environment that you weren't doing 2 years ago?
Sure. So we've been working on a big re-architecture project, a lot of new software. Well, the past couple of years have had a lot of attention to how do we, that was the auctioneer. Mm-hmm. That event, we had to upgrade physically the entire platform with about a 5-week notice. We pulled it off. In the future events like that, once we get the re-architecture done, we'll be able to plug in nodes to spin them up for 10, 12 hours and take them offline.
Yeah.
Some folks would say, well, wait a minute, that's standard cloud. That's been there from day one. Like, well, the cloud's been ready for years, but our own architecture has not. Making a connection back to Midwest Cloud Computing here.
Yeah.
Lots of folks haven't figured out, wait a minute, I have that legacy architecture. How do we make that transition? It's exactly what we're walking through now. We're already a couple of years into it. We have a nice roadmap, and we're moving that direction.
Now, that's exciting. Any exciting auctions coming up? You mentioned last Saturday, but are those car auctions becoming the norm for you guys in your growth? And what are you seeing that's coming up?
So we've had some new partnerships. We had a partnership with some folks. We did one big auction in New York with them. That was, I believe, that was back in November. That was a great event. Similar from an exposure perspective, but different as far as the content. The cars in New York were top of the line. They weren't brand new old cars like the Vanderbrink event, but these were high-end Ferraris and Rolls-Royce. Very neat, almost like an art gallery environment. We're going to be doing some more of those. The next one's coming up in June with a different partnership. It'll be the Finest Automobiles, thefinest.com. That's going to be a big event carrying on going forward. We've also got the partnership with eBay that's still getting arranged. Hopefully we'll have some live auctions out there with eBay here, maybe third quarter.
Yeah,
I think that's where that's coming in. We're really looking forward to that. That's going to be a whole different change. And the benefit for us, obviously, is exposure.
Yeah.
eBay has much more eyes on the system than our market, but our marketplace is bringing much higher dollar items.
Specialized.
Right. And they're looking for that. How do they bring massive amounts of high dollar items to the eBay platform? So we're really looking for that coming together.
That's very cool. I was wondering how long it would be before that kind of partnership took place with eBay, just because it fits so well, but you do it so much better than they do.
The live side, yes.
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. The live side and the better quality, maybe the better quality. More right. It's these are boutique items that you guys sell.
Right. And generic, from a money perspective, your average eBay item is somewhere between $38, somewhere maybe $50, somewhere in that range. Our average items is more thousands of dollars.
Right.
Last Saturday, the average on Saturday was probably several hundreds of thousands. We were selling lots of heavy equipment on Saturday. So
nice.
Depending on the day you're looking at that metric, it's pretty interesting.
Day of the week still matters for you guys in a lot of ways. I mean, it does it. So it's still a traditional style where you would gather people together on a weekend. But the internet hasn't changed that. Then it's still day of the week central.
And interestingly, the heavy construction and ag equipment, it's Thursdays and Saturdays.
Okay.
Why Thursdays? I have no idea. It just is what it is.
Maybe that's the way it's always been.
Yeah, I think so.
Interesting.
Somebody probably knows why, but I don't.
Well, it's probably a traditional model put on top of
a
new model, and it just sticks, right? Those customers are used to looking for those things. The States was the same way. It was Thursday, Friday, Saturday in some cases, right? From that standpoint.
Now, there are some new activities going on abroad. We've had some folks in office out of London for a couple of years now. We've started to have some business coming together there. We've had some folks in Asia. We've hired a salesperson in Tokyo or in Japan. I don't know for sure that's Tokyo. It might be Tokyo.
Yeah.
I should check on that. But we've had some events come about over there, and that's great. Now, what's interesting, those seem to not necessarily be the heavy Thursday, Saturday.
Right.
It's a different culture. It's a different place. So that model may not fall in line.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I think as we look at what the old model was, and you guys have just kind of brought a new way to an old model, and it may be years before that changes, right?
You bet.
Mondays could eventually be the day, right?
You bet.
People come back into the office and they're going to go after this high-end equipment. Why not on Mondays? But
sure.
Interesting. Hey, when we think about the problems of cloud computing, and we think about, what do you see as the biggest challenge still out there as we look to the future of cloud computing? What hurdle do we still need to overcome to really see it take off and be what it can be?
I still see probably the biggest hurdle for companies in general is belief that they can do it and not lose the piece that's the most important to them. And every company is different. Sometimes it's security, sometimes it's the hands-on administration, and there's all kinds of pieces and parts in between. And it's something they're afraid to lose. And in most cases, it's a false hurdle.
Yeah,
it's all in their head, so to speak, because the decision to move forward is the how. How do I move forward without losing that part that's so important to me? It can be done. You just have to walk through and figure that out.
Right. And security is a big problem. We were talking with Teresa about that. How with Midwest, how does that change as a customer? How does that change my security profile by using the pros instead of me setting this up, using the pros to set it up?
Well, there's a couple ways to look at how does that change it. Some of the changes, the capital expense that you don't have to put in. Sure, you're still going to pay for it somehow, but it's not capital. You're not investing in systems, physical systems that are going to be obsolete in 18 months. Let the professionals do that. They already have a model. They can swap that stuff out as the place grows. Most companies, unless you're super large, but even the super large companies are very interested in, well, how can I minimize my CapEx?
Right.
So that's one change. So you got the finance side of it. You got the organizational side of it. If you bring all that in-house, you're going to have a great big team of security specialists in this scenario. Well, is your business about training up security specialists? Well, if it is, that makes sense. For everybody else, let somebody else who's doing that.
Right.
Because most security issues, in a given day, if you have a partner, that partner is going to be handling issues all day long, but for different folks. You're going to be handled along the way. And if you have a breach, it's going to be heavy. And you'll have plans for that if you have the right partner, because they will take you through, if this happens, what do we do? If this happens, what do we do? And the way companies stay ahead of it is they have those discussions before things happen.
Yeah.
I'm going to steal an idea that I've heard from many people. I don't know where it originated, but there's two kinds of companies in the world. Those who have been breached and those who have not yet been breached. It's going to happen.
Sure feels that way, doesn't it? Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, Chance, thanks for taking a few minutes to come by. And,
you bet.
And in your panel today, what are you hoping? Is it open? Are you guys going to get up there and just kind of take questions, or what are you hoping to get through in your panel?
So we've got a series of questions. We're hoping to leave 15 or so minutes at the end for audience questions. But we have a handful of questions, frankly, talking about a lot of the stuff you asked me right here.
Good.
So we'll get into the depths of that. And we've got, I've got a stand-in here today. Manny Quaveda is on the list, but he's not going to be here today. We're going to have John Grange from Laird Eye is going to set in for Manny.
Okay.
We have Dustin Traeger from Microsoft Azure. Dustin worked for me prior at Proxibid, and then we worked together at West in the past.
Sure.
And then we have James O'Neill, VP and CIO, CTO of First National Technology Services.
Great.
So looking forward to that discussion.
Good. Well, it should be good. What time is it at?
That is at 3:30 in Dapper One, I believe. Yep, Dapper One at
the end of the day here. We went from 2 days to one, and then they spread the 1 day out quite a bit. So pretty good. If you're watching live, thanks again for doing this.
Thanks a lot.
If you're watching
folks.
live, hang tight. We will, let's see, we have another interview coming. No, actually have a break, and we'll be back, I think, at 12:30. But look on the schedule there, and if you're just catching this video on YouTube, siliconprairienews.com/live. Chance, thanks again.
Thanks a lot.